Hey everyone, what's going on? Earlier this month, on August 6th, one of the main headline stories in the media was of this holy fire that was going on in California. And it just so happened to be happening at Cleveland National Forest. And I watched this video of Zachary K. Hubbard talking about how in 2017, he was talking about the wildfires in California and also Hurricane Harvey and how it was synced up to the Houston Astros to play the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. And in this video, he was talking about how it's at Cleveland National Forest and it's possibly synced up to the Indians to play the Dodgers in the World Series. Or, one or the other. Maybe it's just for the Dodgers to be in the World Series, or maybe it's just for Cleveland. And the reason that I'm making this video is because there's a big piece that is going on in regards to why they are calling it a holy fire, and it is absolutely synced up to the Cleveland Indians. And if you've been following my channel for the last couple months, I've been talking a lot about how the Cleveland Indians might possibly be playing the Chicago Cubs again in the World Series. But, there's always more to learn. Just documenting and following these patterns that exist every day within our mainstream media. If you're new to what I'm talking about, I talk about signs and symbolism, and also if you understand gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, you can understand these patterns that exist every day a little bit better. And it might sound ridiculous, but I have thousands of videos. Just check them out. I literally have been talking about a major bridge collapse all year long. And then we just got that major bridge collapse that was synced up to the Cleveland Indians. So I'll leave some video links in the description. I'll leave Zach's video link in the description. And you can learn how to apply this as well. And, make your own videos, make your own assumptions by doing the same thing. But the reason in this video he wasn't sure why it was called a holy fire. And the reason that they were calling this a holy fire is because a holy fire is a fire that happens the day before Easter. And in regards to this being at Cleveland National Forest and how it syncs up to the Cleveland Indians, and also think about LeBron James leaving Cleveland to go to LA. It's the 114th World Series this year, and in gematria, LeBron James equals 114, and he signed with the Lakers 114 days before the 114th World Series. And also this national park, it actually was opened on 7/1 of 1908. 7/1 is the same day LeBron James signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. So, the anniversary of this national forest this year was 114 days before the 114th World Series. And 1908 special because Grover Cleveland, who it's named after, who also died at the age of 71, think about the date of 7/1, but he died 108 days before the World Series began in 1908. And in 2016, the last time the Cubs had won the World Series was 108 years before in 1908. And then they played the Cleveland Indians. It was synced up to the death of Grover Cleveland. There was all kinds of 108 that was going on all season with the Cubs. The Willis Tower is 108 stories tall. There's 108 double stitches on the baseball. The Great Chicago Fire that began on 10/8, 145 years previously. Chicago, Illinois equals 145 in gematria. And I believe they're their 145th season even. And if you write out 145, it equals 108. Then they won the World Series in Game 7 in the 10th inning, scoring 8 runs, right? 8 and 10 or 10 and 8, a lot like 108. Much, much more. Lots and lots of 108 stuff that was synced up to the Cubs winning for the first time in 108 years. But anyway, what I was documenting in 2016, when I said I thought the Indians were going to play the Cubs in the World Series clear back in the end of July when Aroldis Chapman got traded to the Cubs in 2016. I also talked about how the Indians were cursed by the curse of Rocky Colavito. And Rocky Colavito just so happened to get traded in 1960 to the Detroit Tigers, and that's where the curse came from, on the 108th day of the year of 1960. And that was important because the last time the Indians have won the World Series was 1948, and the MVP and the coach was Lou Boudreau, and Lou Boudreau died on Rocky Colavito's birthday in 2001. And his birthday is August 10th, which in most parts of the world, they write the date 10/8, a lot like 108. And then he got traded on the 108th day of the year. There's much more that goes along with it. I'm not going to re-explain it all, but I'm just telling you, these two curses are interrelated, and that's why the Indians were playing the Cubs in the World Series. And in regards to Easter and why they're calling this a holy fire, it's because and it's in Cleveland National Forest. If you look up the curse of Rocky Colavito, the day that he got traded, and maybe I didn't put it in here, but you can look it up for yourself. The day that he got traded was actually Easter Sunday in 1960. And what I was going to say about Lou Boudreau in 1960, he was the coach of the Chicago Cubs the same year that Rocky Colavito got traded. That's why it was important of what I was just talking about. But anyway, Rocky Colavito traded on Easter Sunday, and now we're getting this fire that's synced up to the Easters, And the same day that Rocky Colavito got traded, the Indians played an exhibition game against the White Sox at Russwood Park. And later that day, Russwood Park just so happened to burn down, right? So think about that. It was a holy fire, really. It was a fire that burnt down a whole baseball stadium on Easter, the same day Rocky Colavito got traded and the Indians became cursed, right? And then now we're getting this holy fire that's associated with Easter, and it's at Cleveland National Forest. So it's absolutely synced up to the Cleveland Indians. And I wrote a bunch of stuff in here, such as stuff I've been documenting all season. The curse of Rocky Colavito equals 94 in Gematria, just like Cleveland Indians, just like Easter. So it's even super fitting that they would be cursed on Easter, that syncs up with the team name, syncs up with the same curse. In 2016, the Indians even had 94 regular season wins, 94 and 67. The other small way that Cleveland Indians equal 67, so they equal 67 and they also equal 94. So it was super fitting. Also, Terry Francona, the Indians coach, there was a bunch of stuff with Michael Jordan that I was documenting about. And Michael Jordan played baseball under Terry Francona in the year 94, the year of the MLB strike. And Terry Francona, after losing to the Cubs, became 11-4 in coaching the World Series. And his father just died this year, Tito Francona. He died on 2/13, and his birthday was November 4th, 11-4. And he died 8 months and 10 days before the World Series begins this year. And think about Rocky Colavito's birthday being on August 10th. That's also the same day Lou Boudreau died. Also interesting, the day that the story broke in the mainstream media was August 7th, which can be written 7/8, and Cleveland equals 78 in Gematria. And the day that the story actually began on August 6th, that's 78 days before the World Series begins this year. And what's interesting, with the Indians, I have been talking about this number 624 like crazy. Rocky Colavito equals 624 in Satanic Gematria, and he got traded to the Detroit Tigers that equals 624 in Gematria, and Aroldis Chapman equals 624 in Gematria, and he just so happened to be born in 1988 on February 28th, which was the same day that Harvey Keene, the guy who Rocky Colavito was traded for, died. He died on 2/28 of 1988, Aroldis Chapman's birthday. That's the day he was actually born. And then in 2016, Chapman was traded to the Cubs 148 days after his birthday, and Cleveland Indians equal 148 in gematria. So I knew it was synced up to the Cleveland Indians. But also this year, on 6/24, the date of 6/24, the Indians just so happened to play the Detroit Tigers. Can you believe that? Detroit and the Indians played on 6/24 this year. You know, the team that they're cursed by. The Cubs got cursed while they were playing Detroit in 1945, the curse of the Billy Goat, and the last time they won was in 1908, which was also they beat the Detroit Tigers. So there's an absolute super connection to the Detroit Tigers. Now it syncs up to the Cubs and the Indians. I also talked about in 2016 how the Cubs got their 114th win of the season when they won the World Series in Game 7. And they were in their 114th year being called the Cubs. And there was also this tie that happened the same day of the Hoboken train wreck that they said 114 people were injured. And the Cubs tied the Pirates. The word tie equals 114 in gematria. And the last time there was a tie was in 2005 when the Astros tied the Reds 114 days before the World Series that year. The Astros made that World Series and they lost to the Chicago White Sox. So there was this big number, 114. Talked about my uncle as well. And my uncle, then after the Cubs won, and he was a Cubs fan, he died on January 14th, a lot like 114. Talked about my neighbor over here, how he died. He was a huge Cubs fan after the Cubs won. The girl who lives here now, her birthday is November 4th, 11/4, like 114. And, then of course Terry Francona becomes 11-4 coaching in the World Series after losing to the Cubs in Game 7. And this year, in regards to this 6/24, everything in my life is synced up to this number 624. My grandma died 6 months and 24 days before my uncle this year. And my uncle died 6 months and 24 days before my birthday. And my son was born 6 months and 24 days after 6/24. And he was also born 6 months and 24 days before Rocky Colavito's birthday. And I also talked about my dad, who my dad randomly is interrelated into all of this, and it might sound crazy, but there was this drowning thing that I was talking about, and how it was synced up to my dad and my son. And I noticed that on my dad's license plate, the number 624 is on there. And the reason that's interesting is because the other big fire story that's going on in the mainstream media is called the car fire. The car fire. And supposedly it began because of a flat tire. And when I noticed that my dad's license plate had 624 on it, I had got a flat tire and I took my car up there to have him help me fix it because I had to put a new tire on a rim, and my grandpa has a machine to do so, but I've never used it before. And my dad has a hurt shoulder, so he couldn't do it. And he just showed me how to do it and all that. And, just think about that. His license plate has 624 on it because I got a flat tire, and then there's this car fire, right? When I was a kid, I remember there was a car fire as well, and nobody believed me, and I went in and told my dad, our car's on fire, or a car's on fire. I can't remember if it was actually our car. And they didn't believe me, and then when they went outside, the car was engulfed in flames. So there's something weird about this synchronicity. And the reason that's important is because my dad, his birthday is April 11th, which in most parts of the world, they write it as 4 or 11/4, right? And my dad's name in gematria equals 114. And his birthday is 6 months and 24 days before November 4th. 114. Like, what are the odds of all that? Car fire equals the same as Cleveland. It's crazy. These fires in this, holy fire. It's synced up to the Cleveland Indians. Absolutely no doubt. Even Easter this year was on April Fool's Day, and it was 127 days before this fire began. And if you've been following what I've been saying, 127 has been this important number to the Cleveland Indians. In 2016, we started getting all the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff, in October, and then the Indians made the World Series. We've got some story about wild bison or something running through the plains and whatnot. And then the Indians make the World Series. Kind of like last year when we had Hurricane Harvey. Then Matt Harvey was the first pitcher to pitch against Houston in Houston after the floods. 52 days before the World Series, the word flood equals 52, Harvey equals 52. This stuff happens all of the time. I don't know how people don't catch on. Native American stories like crazy in the mainstream media. Then the Indians make the World Series. But the 127 was important because of, Standing Rock and North Dakota. North Dakota equals 127 in gematria. And on Game 7 of the World Series, they celebrated its 127th anniversary of being a state. And the mainstream media even gave us a story about 127 people being arrested at the Dakota Access Pipeline while the World Series was going on. So there's a lot more to that number, but just know this number is super important. So this fire starts 127 days after Easter this year. The only thing that throws me off with this is that, you know, there's some other interesting parallels that are going on with it, and it's Easter being on April Fool's Day. Possibly it's somehow faking us out, thinking it's for the Indians. But we did get a story about how the fire, the smoke, went all the way to New York, and New York in gematria equals 78, just like Cleveland. So they have that same connection. So, something to think about. The 624 stuff, it's just, if it's crazy, you know. It's so connected to my own life. If it's not for the Indians being the World Series, there's something I'm supposed to see within my own life or learn from it. And you'd understand if you watch more of my videos. Also in that sense though, it was 4 months and 5 days, and on Easter the Indians won with a score of 4-5. And this is a big number in connection to the Cubs. Cubs equal 45. Wrigley 45. Illinois equals 45, and so on. Much, much more with that. And April Fools has the same gematria, 147, as World Series. August 6th, the day this fire began, leaves 147 days in the year. So it's super synced up to the World Series. Moral of the story in this video, I didn't want to go into all the synchronicity stuff. I wanted to make it simple and easy to follow. But truly, it's very hard for me to do anymore. Hopefully you understand. Check out some other, videos that I have. They're long, but the more and more you watch what I'm saying, you'll understand what I am talking about and how none of this is coincidence. It's all by this code. This all stems back to this ancient knowledge that the people who control our media understand, and the people who control our sports leagues understand this. And, they know how to manipulate this code to use it against us and use it to their advantage. But moral of the story, it's Cleveland National Forest, and then it's a holy fire, and Rocky Colavito got, cursed the Indians on Easter. That's associated with a holy fire, and the same day he got traded, the place that the Indians played burnt down, right, of fire, like a holy fire. So have a good one. We'll see what happens. We'll keep following. Peace.